My name is Amelia Vance. I grew up in the low country of South Carolina, in a small white house in Charleston with wide porches and a screen door that slammed shut with a satisfying thud. My father was a carpenter, a man whose hands were a roadmap of calluses and faint, silver scars. He smelled of sawdust and patience. He taught me that the truest measure of a person wasn't in the noise they made, but in the integrity of their work. A person's word, Millie, he'd say, sanding a piece of cypress until it was smooth as silk, is the foundation they build their life on. If it's weak, the whole structure will collapse, no matter how pretty you paint the walls. My mother found her art in the garden, coaxing life from the humid, sandy soil. She taught me about root systems, about how the most important growth often happens unseen, beneath the surface. From them, I inherited a quiet belief in the value of diligence and the simple, profound satisfaction of building something true and strong, whether it was a bookshelf or a bed of heirloom tomatoes. At 27, I thought I'd found a place to apply those lessons. I was hired as a junior project manager at the Sterling Group, one of Charleston's most prestigious marketing firms. Their offices were in a beautifully restored historic building on Broad Street, with high ceilings, original heart pine floors, and tall windows that overlooked the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves of ancient live oaks. It felt like a place where good work was not only done but revered. I was ambitious, but my ambition was for the work itself. I wanted to learn, to contribute, to become a master of my craft. The role was demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. I poured myself into it, driven by a deep-seated desire to prove that my father's daughter knew how to build things that would last. From the very first month, I noticed a discrepancy in my paycheck. The long hours I was putting in weren't reflected. When I first brought it up to my boss, Marcus Thorne, he smiled a warm, paternal smile that seemed to fill his handsome, corner office. Marcus was a pillar of the Charleston community, a man whose name appeared on the donor plaques of galleries and charities. He had a way of making you feel seen, valued. "Amelia, don't you worry about that," he said, his voice as smooth and comforting as the aged bourbon he sometimes offered to clients. "The accounting system is a bit archaic. It'll all be reconciled. Just keep focusing on producing the incredible work you're doing. We see it, and we take care of our people." I was young, and I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the kind of team player who didn't quibble over details, who showed my commitment through action. So I let it go. I told myself it was an investment. A few extra hours a week soon bled into entire evenings. Late nights became the norm, the soft glow of my computer screen a solitary beacon in the quiet, historic building long after the city's horse-drawn carriages had clopped back to their stables. My life began to shrink until it was contained within the walls of that beautiful office. I'd leave my apartment before the sun had fully risen, a travel mug of coffee in hand, and often wouldn't return until the moon was high over the harbor, the air thick with the scent of salt marsh and night-blooming jasmine. I missed my sister's engagement party. I missed birthdays. I missed the simple pleasure of an evening walk along the Battery. Every few weeks, I would gently broach the subject of my overtime pay. Each time, Marcus had a new, plausible excuse delivered with that same disarming charm. "We're in the middle of a payroll audit. HR is transitioning to a new software. Just hang in there, Amelia. Your dedication is not going unnoticed. There's a significant bonus structure for high performers at the end of the fiscal year." He made me feel like I was being impatient, that I was failing to see the bigger picture. He was a master at making his requests sound like opportunities, and my needs sound like demands. 6 months passed in this haze of exhaustion and deferred promises. The breaking point came on a Saturday. I was in the office, alone, putting the finishing touches on a massive proposal for a new client, a project Marcus had called "make or break" for the quarter. My phone buzzed. It was a picture from my family's group chat, my parents, my sister, and her new fiancé, all laughing on Folly Beach, the ocean sparkling behind them. The caption read, "We miss you, Millie." A wave of profound loss washed over me. I had given up so much, sacrificed so much of my life, for a promise. I looked at the spreadsheet I'd been keeping on my personal laptop. I had worked over 500 hours of unpaid overtime. It was more than just a discrepancy. It was a significant sum of money I had earned, money I needed. That Monday afternoon, I walked into Marcus Thorne's office. I closed the door softly behind me. The room was impeccable, filled with maritime paintings and first-edition books about Southern history. He looked up from his computer, his smile already in place. Amelia, just the person I wanted to see. Fantastic work on the pitch this weekend. Truly stellar. I took a breath, my heart a steady, determined drumbeat. Thank you, Marcus. I'm glad it's done. That's actually what I need to talk to you about. I've logged over 500 hours of overtime in the last 6 months. We've spoken about it several times, and I need to get it resolved. The smile on his face didn't vanish, but it changed. It tightened at the edges, the warmth receding like a tide. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. Amelia, he said, his tone shifting from paternal to patronizing. I think you're looking at this the wrong way. The Sterling Group is giving you an incredible opportunity. You're gaining experience that takes others a decade to acquire. You're building a reputation in a very competitive field. We value loyalty and commitment here, not clock watching. You should consider these extra hours an investment in your own future. The words hit me not like a punch, but like a slow, creeping chill. He wasn't just dismissing my concerns. He was twisting them, reframing my stolen labor as a gift he had bestowed upon me. I clenched my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. Marcus, I appreciate the experience, but this is about being paid for the work I've done. It's what we agreed to. It's what's fair. He let out a short, soft laugh, a sound utterly devoid of humor. Fair, he repeated, as if the word were a foreign curiosity. Let me be clear. If your primary concern is logging hours, then perhaps you're not the right fit for the culture we've cultivated here. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the quiet room. You have a bright future, Amelia. It would be a shame to tarnish it. Charleston is a small town. Reputations, they matter. I'd hate for you to be seen as someone who isn't a team player. That kind of reputation can follow a person for a very long time. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a threat delivered with the quiet, devastating precision of a surgeon's scalpel. He wasn't just stealing my wages. He was leveraging my future to ensure my silence. He was trying to take my father's lessons of integrity and hard work and use them as a weapon against me. In that moment, standing on the beautiful antique rug in his perfect office, I felt the foundation my father had spoken of tremble beneath my feet. But it didn't crack. Instead, a deep, quiet resolve settled in my bones. I could walk away, swallow the loss, and let him win. Or I could stand up for the simple, honest truth that a day's work deserves a day's pay. I looked him in the eye, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. I understand, I said softly. Thank you for clarifying your position. He nodded, satisfied, already dismissing me as he turned back to his screen. Good. I knew you'd see the bigger picture. He had no idea. The picture I was seeing was clearer than ever before. He had just shown me the weakness in his own foundation. And I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and liberating, that I would not be the one to collapse. I walked out of Marcus's office, my composure a fragile shell around a core of cold, hard clarity. My mind replayed his words, the silken threat woven through his paternal tone. He thought he had put me in my place, that I would retreat into grateful silence. But he had misjudged me. He had mistaken my quiet nature for weakness. My father used to say that the most difficult part of carpentry wasn't the cutting or the joining, but the measuring. Measure twice, cut once, he'd drill into me. Be patient. Be precise. Know exactly what you're dealing with before you pick up the saw. That's what I needed to do now. Measure. As I sat at my desk, the familiar hum of the office around me, I started to see things differently. I saw the weary look in the eyes of Sarah, a senior designer who always ate lunch at her desk. I heard the forced cheerfulness in the voice of Ben, a young copywriter who joked about his diet of ramen noodles despite working on multi-million-dollar accounts. Were they all investing in their futures, too? That afternoon, I sent a carefully worded text message to Sarah. We weren't close friends, but I had always sensed a deep well of integrity beneath her reserved exterior. Me. Hi, Sarah. I have a slightly awkward question. Would you be open to grabbing coffee after work? It's about something financial. Her reply was almost instantaneous. Sarah, how about now? My treat. The cafe on Queen Street. We sat in a quiet corner of the little cafe, the air fragrant with the scent of coffee and pastries. I laid out my situation simply, factually, without emotion. I told her about the hours, the promises, and the conversation I'd just had with Marcus. When I finished, she didn't look surprised. She just nodded slowly, a sad, knowing look in her eyes. He said the same things to me 3 years ago, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The investment, the culture, the veiled threat about my reputation. I was a single mom then. I couldn't afford to lose my job, so I ate it. I stopped tracking the hours. It was easier than fighting. She pulled a small notebook from her bag. I estimated he's taken at least $30,000 from me over the years. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just a one-time deception. It was a pattern. A system. He does it to everyone he thinks he can, Sarah continued, her voice gaining a bit of strength. The young ones, the ones who need the job, the quiet ones who won't make a scene. He preys on good people who believe in working hard. That evening, we created a secure, anonymous email address and sent a message to a handful of other colleagues we trusted. We didn't make accusations. We simply asked, have you experienced discrepancies with your pay or bonus structure at the Sterling Group? We are trying to understand if this is a wider issue. Your response will be held in the strictest confidence. The replies trickled in over the next 24 hours, each one a small story of disillusionment and quiet theft. Then, the copywriter was promised a signing bonus that never materialized. A young woman in accounting had seen her salary adjusted downward after her probationary period, explained away as a clerical error that was never corrected. It was systematic. It was deliberate. And it was deeply, profoundly wrong. The next morning, I walked into the office feeling like a different person. The fear was still there, a low thrum beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a powerful sense of purpose. I was no longer just fighting for my stolen wages. I was standing up for Sarah, for Ben, for everyone Marcus had exploited. Marcus, however, was not done with me. He must have sensed the shift in my demeanor, the subtle change from compliance to resolve. Just before lunch, an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was stark, urgent, formal performance review. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked it open. The email, from HR but clearly dictated by Marcus, stated that multiple anonymous complaints had been lodged against me regarding a negative attitude and a failure to integrate with the company's collaborative culture. It informed me that my access to client accounts and internal servers would be temporarily restricted, pending the outcome of a formal review meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. that afternoon. He had CC'd the entire executive leadership team. It was a classic maneuver of power and intimidation. Discredit the victim. Isolate them. Make them the problem. He was building a case to fire me for cause, ensuring I would leave with nothing, no severance, no unemployment, and a blackened reputation. He was trying to dismantle my professional life with the same cold precision he might use to plan a marketing campaign. I stared at the email, at the list of powerful names all copied on my public shaming. The old me, the Amelia of last week, would have crumpled. She would have panicked, cried, felt the crushing weight of shame and injustice. But the new Amelia, the one who had measured twice, simply took a deep, steadying breath. He had overplayed his hand. He thought he was cornering me, but he had just given me the final piece of evidence I needed, proof of retaliation. I calmly closed the email. I picked up my personal cell phone, my hand surprisingly steady. I looked up the number for the South Carolina Department of Labor. I pressed the call button. "Hello," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "My name is Amelia Vance. I'd like to report a case of systematic wage theft and illegal retaliation at my place of employment, the Sterling Group." The cut had been made. The real work was about to begin. Marcus Thorne believed he was untouchable, a king in his restored historic castle on Broad Street. He thought that by firing me, by burying me under a pile of manufactured complaints, he could sever the one loose thread that threatened to unravel his carefully woven tapestry of deceit. What he failed to understand was that the thread was no longer attached to just me. It was connected to a dozen other people, and we were beginning to pull together. I sat at my desk, the 3 p.m. review meeting looming like a guillotine. But the fear had been replaced by a strange, almost serene focus. I spent the next hour meticulously documenting everything. I forwarded the retaliatory email from HR to my personal account. I gathered the anonymous testimonies from my colleagues. I organized my own spreadsheets, pay stubs, and the notes I'd taken after every conversation with Marcus. I was no longer an employee preparing for a disciplinary hearing. I was an archivist building a case. At noon, Sarah, Ben, and 2 others met me in Washington Square Park, a quiet green space behind the Grand Charleston Courthouse. We sat on a bench under the shade of a sprawling oak, its branches draped with Spanish moss, looking for all the world like a group of colleagues enjoying their lunch break. "He's trying to fire me this afternoon," I said, keeping my voice low. "He's claiming I have a bad attitude." Ben let out a bitter laugh. "A bad attitude? Is that what they call it when you ask to be paid?" "He'll do the same to us if he finds out we're talking," said Maria, a quiet graphic designer. "My husband's on a visa. I can't risk my job." The fear in the group was palpable, a heavy, humid blanket. I understood it. Marcus hadn't just stolen our money, he'd stolen our security, making us feel powerless and isolated. "He's counting on us being too scared to speak up," I said, looking at each of them. "He's counting on us staying silent. That's his entire strategy." But the Department of Labor is opening an investigation. I called them this morning. The investigator said that our case is strongest if we stand together. Our stories corroborate each other. I saw a flicker of something in their eyes, not yet courage, but the possibility of it. It was the we that did it. The simple, powerful fact of not being alone. Just then, my phone buzzed. A new email from HR. My heart leaped into my throat. The subject line was even more blunt than the last one: immediate termination of employment. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly. Effective immediately, it read, "Your employment with the Sterling Group is terminated. This decision is based on insubordination, a breach of company confidentiality policies, and the creation of a hostile work environment. Please collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises within the hour. Security will escort you from the building." He'd done it. He hadn't even waited for the sham meeting. He must have gotten wind that I was talking to others, that his strategy of isolation was failing. He was trying to cut out the cancer before it could spread. A wave of dizziness washed over me, the public humiliation of it, the finality. Then I looked up at the faces of my colleagues, their expressions a mixture of horror and pity. And in that moment, something shifted. He hadn't silenced me. He had liberated me. He had just turned me from a constrained employee into a free agent with a singular focus and nothing left to lose. I took a breath and turned to the small, frightened group. "He just fired me," I said, my voice steady. "So we have a choice. We can let him pick us off one by one. Or we can do this right." A new resolve settled over the group. The shared injustice was a powerful catalyst. We spent the rest of the lunch hour planning. Step 1. The legal front. We all agreed to submit official, signed affidavits to the Department of Labor investigator, detailing our own experiences with wage theft. Sarah, it turned out, had a cousin who was a labor lawyer. She made a call, and by the end of the day, he had agreed to represent us pro bono in a class action lawsuit. Step 2. The narrative. This was Charleston, a city that ran on reputation. A frontal media assault would be seen as crass. We needed something more elegant, more damning. Ben's old college roommate was a respected investigative journalist for a prominent statewide newspaper known for its long-form, deeply researched pieces. Ben made the call. The journalist was immediately interested in a story about cracks in the facade of one of Charleston's most celebrated businesses. Step 3. The internal pressure. We couldn't ask anyone else to risk their jobs. But we could provide them with the anonymous email address and the contact information for the Department of Labor. Knowledge was its own form of power. That afternoon, a quiet security guard, a kind, elderly man who always had a friendly word for me, escorted me to my desk. He looked deeply uncomfortable. "I'm real sorry about this, Ms. Vance," he whispered as I packed my few personal items into a small cardboard box. I gave him a small, reassuring smile. As I walked out of that beautiful building for the last time, past the portraits of the city's founders and the gleaming hardwood floors, I didn't feel defeated. I felt a strange sense of peace. I had built something good there, done good work. Now, I was going to do the necessary work of taking down something rotten. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain drumming against my windowpane. The world outside felt gray and washed clean. I also woke to a flurry of text messages. The anonymous email we'd shared had spread through the company like wildfire. Over 20 more employees had come forward overnight with their own stories, ranging from unpaid expenses to manipulated commission reports. The foundation of Marcus Thorne's kingdom was beginning to crumble from within. His empire didn't collapse in a single, fiery explosion. It was more like a slow, structural failure, the result of 1,000 hidden weaknesses finally being exposed to the light. The first visible crack appeared on a Tuesday, 1 week after I was fired. The investigative article was published. It wasn't a sensationalist hit piece, it was far more devastating. It was a calm, meticulously researched, and deeply human story. The journalist, David Chin, had interviewed a dozen anonymous former and current employees. He'd spoken to labor law experts. He had even respectfully quoted my father, without using his name, on the importance of an honest foundation. The article painted a portrait of a company culture where exploitation was disguised as opportunity and where a celebrated community leader had built his success on the quiet, unpaid labor of his employees. In a city like Charleston, where heritage and honor are currencies in themselves, the story was a bombshell. The fallout was immediate. The Sterling Group's largest client, a family-owned hotel chain with deep local roots, announced they were reevaluating their partnership. A prominent arts festival, of which Marcus was a major patron, quietly removed his name from their list of sponsors. Whispers started in the private clubs and on the golf courses where Marcus had networked his way to the top. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor investigation moved with surprising speed. Armed with nearly 24 sworn affidavits, they launched a full-scale audit of the Sterling Group's payroll records going back 5 years. For me, those weeks were a strange mix of vindication and uncertainty. I spent my days coordinating with the lawyer, helping other employees document their claims, and fielding calls from reporters. But I was also unemployed, my savings dwindling. The fear for my own future was real. Then, one afternoon, I received an email with the subject line, "A Conversation." It was from Clara Hayes, the founder and CEO of Harborview Consulting, a smaller, newer firm known for its innovative work and its fiercely ethical reputation. I had admired her from afar for years. We met at a coffee shop on Sullivan's Island, with a view of the water and the distant silhouette of the Ravenel Bridge. Clara was direct, warm, and had an intensity that was captivating. "Amelia," she said, after we'd ordered, "I read the article, and I've been hearing things through the grapevine. I'm not interested in the gossip. I'm interested in the character of the person at the center of it all. It takes immense courage to do what you did. I felt a blush creep up my neck. I just did what I thought was right. That's a rarer quality than you think, she said with a small smile. I'm expanding my team. I need a director of operations, someone with an impeccable eye for detail, a strong project management background, and an unshakable moral compass. Someone who knows how to build things properly from the ground up. She paused, her gaze steady. The job is yours if you want it. I was so stunned, I could barely speak. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a life raft. It was validation. It was a testament to the idea that doing the right thing, even when it was terrifying, could lead to better places. Back in the city, the walls were closing in on Marcus Thorne. The board of directors, a group of powerful local figures who were now facing public scrutiny, convened an emergency meeting. They demanded he step down temporarily pending the outcome of the investigation. He refused, his arrogance apparently boundless. That was his final mistake. The board, panicked about their own liability and reputations, voted to terminate his contract. The news broke on the local evening broadcast. I watched it on my laptop, sitting in my small apartment. The anchor reported that Marcus Thorne had been fired, effective immediately, from the company he had built. There was no image of him, just a stock photo of the beautiful building on Broad Street. I didn't feel a surge of triumph or a desire for revenge. I just felt a profound, quiet sadness for the waste of it all. He had been given so much, talent, charm, opportunity, and he had used it to build something hollow. The next day, our lawyer officially filed the class action lawsuit. 34 names were listed as plaintiffs. My name was at the top. The storm had fully broken. I had a new job, a new sense of purpose, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find its way to the surface. A year can feel like a lifetime. In the 12 months that followed the collapse of the Sterling Group, my own life settled into a new, healthier rhythm. At Harborview Consulting, I wasn't just an employee. I was a partner in building a culture of transparency and respect. Clara Hayes was a true mentor, a leader who led with encouragement, not fear. We worked hard, but our work was joyful and collaborative. I left the office at a reasonable hour. I had dinner with my family. I walked on the beach. I was rebuilding my life on a stronger foundation. The legal case against Marcus Thorne and the Sterling Group ground its way through the slow, methodical machinery of justice. The company, gutted of its leadership and reputation, filed for bankruptcy. The court-appointed trustees liquidated its assets, and a settlement was reached for the class action lawsuit. One by one, my former colleagues received checks for their stolen wages, with damages. It wasn't a windfall for any of us, but it was restitution. It was an acknowledgement. It was, in its own quiet way, justice. Marcus himself disappeared from Charleston's public life. His name vanished from the society pages and charity boards. I heard through the grapevine that he and his wife had sold their grand house south of Broad and moved away, seeking anonymity in a place where his name didn't carry the taint of scandal. He was facing federal investigation for tax fraud related to the payroll scheme, but his ultimate fate was a story I no longer felt the need to follow. My focus had shifted from his downfall to my own growth. My story, however, took on a life of its own. The newspaper article was nominated for a regional journalism award. Business ethics classes at the College of Charleston began using the Sterling Group as a case study in failed leadership. I was invited to speak on a panel about creating ethical workplaces, an invitation I accepted with a trembling heart. Standing on that small stage, looking out at a room full of young, ambitious students, I didn't tell a story of revenge. I told a story of self-respect. I spoke about my father and his lessons on integrity. I spoke about the corrosive power of fear and the quiet, collective strength of people who decide to speak the truth together. After the panel, a young woman approached me, her eyes shining with a familiar mixture of ambition and anxiety. I'm about to start my first job, she said. I'm so scared of not being good enough, of being seen as difficult if I speak up. Your voice is not a difficulty, I told her, the words feeling truer than anything I'd ever said. It's your most valuable asset. The right place, the right people will want to hear it. That interaction meant more to me than any settlement check. It was a sign that my painful experience had been transmuted into something useful, something that might protect someone else. One rainy Saturday afternoon, about a year and a half after I was fired, a single white envelope arrived in my mailbox. It was addressed to me in elegant, slanting handwriting that I recognized immediately. There was no return address. My first instinct was to throw it away, unopened. What could he possibly have to say that I needed to hear? But curiosity, and perhaps a desire for complete closure, won out. I sat at my kitchen table and slit it open with a butter knife. The letter inside was written on a single sheet of plain, inexpensive paper. Amelia. I imagine this is the last letter you ever expected to receive. I am writing to you not to ask for forgiveness, as I know I have no right to it. I am writing because I need, for my own sake, to understand. I have spent the last year in a state of deep reflection. I lost everything I spent my life building, my company, my reputation, my home. For a long time, I told myself I was the victim of a betrayal, that you and the others were ungrateful. It was a comfortable story, but a false one. The truth, I see now, is that I was the one who was ungrateful. I was surrounded by talented, dedicated people, and I saw them not as human beings, but as resources to be exploited. I was a man who became so obsessed with the appearance of success that I lost touch with the meaning of integrity. I took your hard work, your trust, and your time, and I told myself it was my due. That was my failing. A profound and catastrophic one. My father was a banker, a man who believed a person's worth was written on a balance sheet. I spent my whole life trying to prove him right. It seems my father was wrong. And so was I. I do not expect a reply. I only hope that your life is as full and rewarding as you deserve it to be. Sincerely, Marcus Thorne. I read the letter twice. There was no pride in it, no lingering arrogance. Only the hollow, aching sound of a man who had finally been forced to look at his own reflection. The anger and hurt I had once felt toward him had long since faded, leaving behind only a faint, phantom ache. I didn't feel pity, but I felt a sliver of compassion for the man who had to live with the knowledge of his own broken foundation. I folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box where I keep things of significance. I would not reply. There was nothing left to say. My success, my peace, my quiet, well-built life, that was my reply. The work of building is never truly finished. We are always adding to the structure, sanding the rough edges, strengthening the supports. I had learned that my own foundation was stronger than I ever knew, and I would spend the rest of my days honoring it, in the work I did, the people I mentored, and the quiet, unwavering belief that a life, like a house, is only as good as the truth it is built upon.